Yep. Let me get everybody's attention. Start just a second. You need a last shot of coffee. It's over here. Good community coffee. While we come in. All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out bright and early this morning. You know, what DNA is doing is trying to figure out what's the best time to get people together. We're sorting that out. We're trying after lunch. We're trying in the Natchez coffee. We're trying here. And so this is a good turnout. So thank you for coming this morning. I'd like to introduce all the women who represent the hall. Just got a few comments about the city.
No, we're not going to keep us long with anything about the city. Just a welcome from the mayor and the board of aldermen to all of you for coming today. And thank Nikki for putting this on. And also, the mayor sends special greetings to all of you from Washington. He's there advocating for us as usual. But this is going to be, I think, very informative for all of us. And it's so good to see a lot of the merchants here, business people, and members of the public. So thank you very much. And Mr. Leon.
I've worked with Rachael for a number of years throughout the state, and every time I do something with her, whether I'm getting sunburned in West Point doing festival analysis, or looking at towns with her, walking across the state, I've learned something. Yesterday, in talking about this particular study, she used terms like granular and back out numbers and tapestry segment. And I didn't know what those were, but I do now. So you learn something new every day. Those terms apply to economic analysis. Rachel's worked in towns all across Mississippi, most recently in Baltimore, Mississippi, Sonoma County, between Batesville and Clarksdale, for those of you who don't go on 520. She's worked recently past Christian, and I want to pay attention to this. She's worked recently in Laurel, Mississippi, and I will tell you, Laurel, Mississippi wants Natchez. They are up and coming, and they are after us. So just a heads up, we should pay attention to that. And she's worked recently in 37 Main Street towns, Main Street town across Mississippi, doing this economic analysis. She's been here before. She has some good friends here in Natchez. In 2014, she came with her daughter to Water Valley and looked at a project that we were doing there. It was 4 buildings in a row, 2 of them caving in, 20,000 square feet of grunge. And we took those buildings and turned them into 4 businesses and 8 of the 4 apartments. And her daughter at the time was maybe 12. And Rachel tells me she's seen what's going on in Water Valley and also in Ocean Springs, that she's decided to kind of go into the Main Street urban renewal work as a 20-year-old now. I will tell you that Ocean Springs is probably a little bit better. You know, it's downtown with a beach. That's good. Something we should do perhaps in the master plan. Just think about putting some sand down the riverfront, you know, Bogey Pass, one of the deals or something like that. We could address the master plan judgment. I tell you what, I would just like to make a personal note, this data, I think, is going to help us improve existing businesses and find businesses that want to be in downtown Natchez. And we should always be cognizant of the fact that there is competition out there, and people have choices. People will vote with their feet and leave, and we are trying to keep people here and keep them in businesses, get new businesses started. And that's really what I hope when we do this data mining here, and look at what Rachel's report says, we can find those segments that we can improve on. And Rachel, all the way from Starkville, Rachel Carter.
Thank you, Nikki. Nikki Howley is one of the most talented community development experts I've had the pleasure of working with, and said we've worked together on a lot of projects probably over the last 10 or 15 years. Excited to be back in Natchez. I got to do some work here early career, and it sure was a lot of fun. I learned a lot of great people here. There's very faces out there. So very excited to be here. I think this is not.
I'm coming.
That's not my presentation. We'll get it up there in just a second. But I live in Starkville, work at Mississippi State University. I'm housed in the Center for Government and Community Development. And so something to remember about that center is we train almost every elected official at some point during the year. So we do a lot of classes with Mississippi Municipal League, Supervisors Association, tax assessors and collectors, pretty much everybody. And I handle most of the economic development issues and questions, challenges that we have. So let's get into Natchez.
One more second.
Okay.
Let me get it on the live stream so everybody can see it.
One of my favorite areas to work in is tourism, and also with Main Street. And as you said, we just got done doing studies, just like what we did for you guys, in 37 different communities. We actually did 48, but there were a few of them that we tweaked and offered some different services for them. But we'll be coming out with a report that's kind of a comparative study between all those towns. So you've got your own report, but here in just a few weeks we'll have some information where we kind of see what's going on across the entire state with our Main Street community. So y'all look for that, because Nikki will get that when it's done. All right, let's keep going. This information is from Data USA, and I wanted to just show you guys this because this is a free resource that any of you can use. Has anybody ever used Data USA before? It gives you a lot of demographic information. As I said, it's free. It creates charts, but it kind of gives you a snapshot of what's going on in your local economy. So it's super easy to use. That's why I like it. I have a lot of fancy software systems, but sometimes a little goes a long way. But this just shows you where your employment is, and the bigger categories are where you have more employment. So that gives you just a look. We've got a lot of employment in the healthcare sector, a lot in retail trade, a lot in accommodations and food service, educational services. So you've got a very diverse, pretty diverse economy, actually, for a small town. One thing to look at is the wages, though. Some of these categories may not have as many people employed in them, but those you see are more high-paying jobs in the management occupations. Some of the healthcare sectors, the darker slides, the darker blocks are actually the categories where people are making a lot more money. So if you got a business, you may want to target people who are working in these industries. If you want to target somebody, if you're trying to sell high-end luxury goods, you may want to target people who are working in some of those areas that may not pay as much if you're selling some of those necessity goods that are not as expensive. As part of this project, what we do is we use Esri to kind of identify what tapestry segments you have in your community, what are the dominant tapestries. So what a tapestry is basically a group of people that have some similarities. And Esri does survey data, they identify spending profiles. A lot of information goes into creating a tapestry or a market segment is a better term, I think. And so these are the top 3 in your community, and these are just some basic facts about it. And if you want a lot more information, you can certainly, all you got to do, I can give you some information, or you can go to Google and type in economic bedrock Esri, and it's going to give you like a 4-page report that's free. So that's a great thing about that. Esri data can be very expensive, but they do put a lot of things online that are free that you can look at. The rural bypass segment, that is kind of the average household size, 2.5, median age is 40. Median household income is 33. And these are folks that they like the outdoors. They like gardening. They like watching TV, those kind of things. Modest income homes, they have a lower income level, And what we see is a lot of the people in that group are caregivers. They've got multi-generational homes, whether they've got children at home, grandchildren at home, or you've got people that are caring for elderly parents and things like that. So that's kind of a lot about that group. They don't have a lot of spending power, but you do have a good bit of people that are in that category in your trade area. And we'll talk about your trade area in a minute. Economic bedrock, folks that maybe work in construction and agriculture, they like the outdoors, they like watching TV, they like cooking their own food, they're kind of simple living is something that they really enjoy. A lot of them are married. And then some of these smaller segments are comfortable empty nesters and the midlife constants. Those are the folks in your local community that have spending power to spend in more high-end segments. But those are very small segments of your population. And a lot of times people say, oh, well, we would really like to get a high-end chain store, a high-end chain restaurant. A lot of times you won't get that if you've got a very small percentage of some of those, because the companies look at data just like what I look at, and so they look at that and say, oh, it would be really hard to be successful. So these are the type of communities where you have to think about, okay, how do we serve those local markets that may not have as high a spending profile, but also how do we draw in people from outside our trade area that have more spending power. And that's one reason I like tourism, is because you almost, in Mississippi, we don't have as much money as in other states. So that's just a fact. And so when you have tourism, a lot of times, even if you're in a town like Starkville, when we have a festival or a sporting event, the people that come into town, on average, have a whole lot more money than the people that live in the town. And so we love tourists there. So that's just something to think about. But you don't even have to think about tourists as in far out of town. That's great. But even drawing in people, I call them day trippers, when somebody comes to a Walmart Supercenter and they live in a town of 500 and then they drive to a town that has a Walmart Supercenter. They're basically a day tripper because they go to Walmart, they go to eat, they go to 2 or 3 different places, and then they go home. All right, I looked at a lot of different segments, and Vicki will get the report that has all of the detailed information. But these are just some of the high points. When we do economic studies, we do what's called a retail trade analysis. Has anybody ever heard of that? Some of you have? Okay, good. What that is it tells us whether or not people are shopping locally But you guys are doing fairly well. Vidalia has a higher median income, Woodville has a higher median income than the trade area. So what that means is that you're wanting to pull shoppers, and you are pulling shoppers from some of those other towns. So that's something to think about. Another thing to think about, just to kind of, I always put median household income, average disposable income, and per capita income on those slides. And the reason is the disposable income kind of helps you identify, okay, we've got people who have money to spend, maybe their income level's not that high, but maybe their house is paid for. So you can kind of look at what that disposable income is. And then you also want to look at per capita income, because that is an indicator of a wage gap. If you have a pretty good, solid median household income, but then you have a really low per capita income, that means that there's a little bit of work to do, you know, as far as getting those that are on the lower income scale moved up. All right, know your community. This is just a little slide that I did to kind of show the age of the community. You guys have a little bit of an older population than some other towns in Mississippi. But your Natchez population is over 14,000, almost 15,000, but your trade area of 18 to 24 miles, that's 47,000 people that you have to draw from for shoppers that are more likely to shop here than somewhere else if you have what they need and what they can afford. So that's just a good thing to think about. And then down here, these are the age gaps, and these are the really young here on this end, and then the millennials in the middle. And then we got the Generation X's, which is me, and then the baby boomers and the oldest generation that we have. So you can kind of get a picture of how that's scattered out. The reason that's good to know is that kind of helps you identify what the populations are and who could be a potential target market, because age is very important when you buy goods and services. Another thing to show is your racial background. African American is 62%, and white is below that, and then there's a couple other segments that are way below that. Okay. Let's talk about the survey. Now, this is information that comes from you all. And the reason that we do the survey is when you have existing data sets like the Esri data or census data or any of that, it can get dated really fast because people don't gather that data every single year. And then also when you're gathering a bunch of data over a big population, it's very easy for there to be errors and glitches in that data. And so I love to do surveys, even though you can't sample the entire population, and sometimes it's not going to be completely representative of the local population because not everybody has time to fill out a survey or cares to fill out a survey. I don't fill out a lot of surveys, even though I do survey research. So that kind of tells you, you gotta have a really kind person fill out a survey or somebody who's really mad about something. So just being honest, this is what you get up here. The survey, Chesney did a fantastic job pushing this out. We really appreciate that. The way we put the survey out was it was posted on the city social media, Natchez, Downtown Alliance social media. Those were some of the main ways this was pushed out. It was emailed out to just groups where email lists were easily accessible. So it's not going to be completely representative of your population, but it's still better than not having any idea what people think in the community. But you had over almost 500 people fill this thing out, which is huge. That's probably, we may have had one or two communities in the state that had more than that, and I'm not even sure, maybe one. And so you had a really good survey response rate. So that's why I'm very comfortable sharing this data with you, because that's a lot of people to fill out a survey in a town this size. And that also shows a lot of people in this community care, which is really good. This is just kind of the socio-demographic breakdown of the 489 respondents to the survey. 26% male, 49% female, 3.5% prefer not to say. The average age of the survey was 58, so you can take that into consideration. The race or ethnicity, 68% white filled out the survey, 4% African American filled out the survey. And then a lot of married people filled out the survey, but divorced people did not fill out the survey. So I don't know what that was about, but they didn't. So yes, I had my phone. So. But anyway, that's just kind of the breakdown. I don't know what that was. So just to let y'all know. We asked a lot of questions on this survey, but one of them was, what is Natchez known for? And I like to ask this because this can kind of help you instill a sense of pride and what also people think about the community. And y'all had a lot of positive responses, you know, and that it's very historic, it's beautiful, there's tourism, there's shopping. And that's also a way to kind of do some asset mapping. This shows you what your strengths are, is when people talk about the things that they feel like their community is known about. And so some of the communities we surveyed, you know, they said our community's known about for nothing and for looking terrible. You know, that was some of the response. That's not what y'all got. So feel real good about that. Y'all are doing a lot of things right in Natchez. So I was very, very pleased to see this. Restaurants, and that makes sense if y'all are drawing in people from outside your trade area and within your trade area. And just the look of the downtown. So very positive on that. What type of business would you like to see in Natchez? Now, we kept that question open-ended, so people could write anything. I mean, if they wanted to put underwater basket weaving as a business, they could. But we tried to just identify some themes within this, and a lot of that is in the report that Nikki will have and the Main Street will have. But I also did a word count of just things that were mentioned in popular restaurants were mentioned 90 times. Children or youth was mentioned 87 times. Grocery store and clothing store. So those are things to really think about. And I really want you guys to think, I don't usually give advice, but I do want y'all to think about the youth and the children's sector, because that was also in the improved category where that showed up, as people were wanting more things for children and youth. You do have an older population, so how can you appeal to younger generations, younger families? And then the older folks, they want stuff to do with their grandkids. So think about that. And that's just a graphic that I like to use because the words that were mentioned more times show up bigger, things that people would like to see in the community. And so y'all can just kind of see, just a look at that. Shops, retail, just general, more small businesses. This community wants to see more small business. So, and most of these comments were real nice. Sometimes we get stuff that I can't do this graphic. So, you know, this was really good. So, anyway, if y'all want to look at that for just a second. Entertainment, I was happy to see that. People are interested, wanting to get downtown. Something. We just want to say, and that was very popular. We just want to say something new or something for kids or something for entertainment. Yeah, second things. All right, we also asked where you're shopping for different goods and services. And we had a list of towns that Chesney and I talked about this, about where do you think people are probably shopping if they're not shopping here. And we created a list of different options that people could choose from. But when I analyzed the data, we either did local shopping or shopping somewhere else for this chart. So as you can see, a lot of local shopping from the respondents. You have to remember a lot of your respondents are older and most of them are over $50,000 in their income level. But you are still losing some in some sectors. About 50 to 60% of healthcare is local. That means that 50 to 40 to 50% are leaving for healthcare, and that is where you're showing that you're leaking dollars. That tells me that that is on target. Another thing to see is that you're leaking in clothing. That's very common in Mississippi. We lose a lot of clothing sales to online shopping. So, and I can't say that I've never online shopped, and probably most of you can't say that either, but that is something to think about. Appliances is something that people are not shopping that locally for. I did want to highlight that your upscale restaurant local shopping is probably higher than any of the other communities that we studied. More people were shopping local for that upscale dining, whereas a lot of other towns, people were going somewhere else for upscale dining. So that was really good. If y'all just want to kind of take a look at that, if you have one you can't see, I can talk about it. But pretty good numbers there, honestly. I also want to point out when we run this actual chart, the way we compute this is a lot of times childcare will be low, but that's because a lot of people who answered the survey don't have children. And so so when we ran the actual mean analysis for this, it kind of showed differently. So
what year is that? You have X's by the year.
This was all done, this survey was done this year, like in the past 6 months, I believe we did it over, Jesse, we sent this out this fall?
Started it last year,
Mhm.
and then we finished it up.
We let the survey run a long time.
Rachel, when you say leaking, and then you say, to me, leaking is either going to somewhere else or it's online. Do you have any idea how much of the leaking is going to online sales versus going to other communities?
Yes, I can give you a breakdown of every category on that. It's on my computer. I didn't put it in the slides, but we can definitely pull that out for you so you can see that.
I don't see gifts or retail.
Let me see. No, I didn't have that one on there. I didn't have gifts as one of the selections.
No, yes.
Probably should have, but I didn't. That was not one of the options. All right. Okay, and Walter, this is kind of one of the slides I pulled out since clothing and entertainment were things people were really wanting to see small businesses in. I wanted you guys to see a breakdown of where people are shopping for those goods. The blue line is clothing, the green is entertainment and recreation. So you can kind of see that online shopping, if they're not shopping in Natchez for clothing, primarily it's online. But entertainment is typically not going to be online. That's going to be going somewhere else.
I don't understand that. What does it show?
So what you're saying is that in both categories, Baton Rouge is our biggest competitor, or the place where most people are going outside of Natchez.
Except for club.
Which would make sense because you get the mall of Louisiana. Baton Rouge.
What we saw overall across the state was that a lot of people were very willing, if they were engaged in their community and there were goods and services they could buy that are necessity goods, people would shop local for that. But those more amenity, entertainment type items, they're gonna go to a bigger town, or they're gonna go somewhere that they think is fun, where they can get an experience. But I would feel like y'all are probably getting a lot of experienced shoppers here that live in smaller surrounding towns. But yes, Baton Rouge is probably your biggest competitor as far as experience purchases. Anything else? No. All right, community improvements. Just to kind of put this in a nutshell, I read through all of these reports again last night, and there's 21 pages of comments on what can be improved upon in Natchez. Which is good. People are telling us what they want. But a lot of them were related to the visual appeal of the community, as far as stopping litter, encouraging people to fill in the vacant building space, cleaning up the vacant buildings, enforcing property maintenance within the city, those kind of things. Other things to point out is people did want to see things for young people. When you see people, they're talking about young people when that pops up. And then other things that were mentioned were improving the school system and addressing any crime issues. But school took priority over the crime issues, but people did not mention school as much as they mentioned, let's just support small business and clean up our downtown and keep moving it forward. All right, how promising is the future of Natchez? It was a scale of 1 to 10 where people could vote, 10 of course being the highest. Y'all's average score was a little up between 7 and 8, and that's actually really good compared to what we saw for a lot of the other communities in the state. So people feel like y'all got a future, you know, that things are looking up and going well in Natchez. This was added onto your survey because you guys have already done a lot of work creating a master plan for your community. And we did this just to kind of check and see. That plan was done, Jesse, is 2018 when that was completed?
The city adopted it in May of 2018.
City adopted it in May of 2018. So these were some of the things that were part of that master plan. And we wanted to see if people still thought some of those things were important, you know, because it's been a few years. And the answer is yes. Those items that were put in the master plan, such as, I'm going to step closer so I can read these to you guys. in case you didn't see them. Preservation and development of key downtown anchors, the Bluff and Arts District. Downtown, that's the red. Downtown mobility, this includes improving traffic flow, parking management, that's the purple. And downtown residential, develop new housing options, playgrounds, recreation options, that's the blue, really high, very important as well. Ongoing downtown business development and promotion. So, and that's the green, and that one had the highest score, as far as being very important. So what this tells me is your plan is still relevant to the people who took the survey. So that's really good news if y'all are already working on that plan. But as we talked about in the improvement category and in the suggested businesses, the people who took this survey really feel like it's important to support small business and continue to develop that. And then we had a few folks that chose to make an extra comment. We let them have that option. And those were the additional comments when we asked what they thought about this master plan priorities. Is preservation and development of the Bluff and the Art District, improved traffic flow. People actually took some stuff from the suggestions and wrote it in the comment box. Improve property vacancy rates, create incentives for small businesses. Those are always good if you can do that. Become a small business destination. I like that. Community engagement. We asked this question because it's very important to know if your community is engaged and working together. And this is very important if you want to have sustainable community development, is you really need to have the local population working across different segments and different groups. And so you want the artists and the teachers and the people that work at the hospital all communicating with each other on common goals and things that's important to them. But 62% have attended a public meeting or a town and city affairs. That's a really good percentage. 61% participated in community improvement activity. That's really good. I'm going to tell you, apathy is one of the things we really deal with in our small towns across the state, and y'all don't really have that problem. So that's really good. So you just have to work on working together to solve those problems. 60% have worked with others in the community to try to solve a problem in Natchez. That's awesome. Two things that you did not score as high on was 29% have attended a public meeting on school affairs, yet school kept popping up in the improvement category of what people wanted, but the people who say the school needs to be improved are not necessarily they're not helping improve the school. So that's something to think about. And 26% participated in meetings regarding the downtown master plan. That is all the data that I have for you guys, except for your fun facts. Whenever I go to a community, I like to find something kind of weird that jumps out, and you never know what it's going to be, but it's always really fun. So you guys are above the national average for gym membership, playing bingo, watching basketball and football, being a caregiver, we already talked about that, purchasing cat food.
That's only from like 3 people.
3 people. That's good. And roller skating. And roller skating came up in conversations last night. So I don't really understand this, and I rarely do, but I told one of my coworkers about the cat food purchasing, and he did a Google search, and he found the story about Tripod, the cat from the city. So maybe y'all have an affinity for cats here, and that's fine. That's good. Everybody's got their thing. You can capitalize on that if you want to. That could be a lot of fun. Roller skating probably kind of fun too. So, and also do in all seriousness think about the above the national average for caregivers. So if you've got a lot of people who are caring for elderly people or young people in this community, how can you provide the services and the businesses and the things that they need to improve their quality of life and also create small business success? All right, Natchez, that's all I've got for you guys. I'll be happy to answer questions. I've got a lot more detailed data, but these are the high points that we hit today. Thank y'all.
Are there any questions for Rachel? The thing I was happy to find out about is that we are not apathetic. Not at all. And the cat food thing's a little strange.
It's all stray cat.
There is something for dogs coming up pretty soon. I would like to thank very quickly while you think about questions, to thank Walter and Ryan and Dustin and Creighton for setting up this thing today. They let us use this facility, and they really do a great job and put in an effort. So thank you guys very much for letting them use the place.
I have a question.
Okay.
So what I'd like to know is this: what is the status of Margaret Martin right now? Has it been sold? Do we know that, Chestnut?
Yes.
It has. Who's saying yes?
Yes, and that's.
Okay. So here's my question. We have so many empty buildings in this town. One of the things we're talking about is children. I'm very involved in children. I have 10 grandchildren. I've raised pretty good children. So here's my thought. What about a rock climbing gym? That could be one of the easiest things to establish in this town. It seems like that would be physical. It would be very challenging, and it's such a big deal everywhere else, generally, because we do have athletic children. That's one thing. The other thing is my passion is art and activities that involve art for the elderly, especially games for the brain. Since I have now become an elderly, my brain is really challenged, and I am trying to do things that really will challenge me. Now, there's a lot of very smart elderly people in this town, but something that is an all-encompassing place that has all the features of a classical activity center, a cultural center that engages in all things. I've been on this for a very, very long time. So where is just
With Miss Sabrina Bartley at the Senior Citizen Center. And then
well, we have a building, right? But do we have the occupational? Do we have the leadership to get people in there to make these things happen?
Sabrina Bartley.
Who?
Miss Sabrina Bartley.
Okay.
She's executive director of the Senior Citizens. Washington and MLK.
All right.
And I own, not to interrupt you, but I own the Painting and Silk Art and Entertainment Studio. It's located in this the plaza where South Side Market is, and we have Senior Citizen Day. I teach